if we can grow food differently than we were growing food. In here, we've just
And you never put any chemical, industrial chemical in it?
we put a little bit of green sand, which is a rock, which is a mineral, so it helps feed the soil, the bacteria in the soil, and we put compost. But we're growing carrot. There's carrots just starting to come up in here, and we're trying. Our goal is to never have to till the soil. These beds haven't been tilled this year.
Oh, really?
They've just been. We've hand weeded them, and we've mulched them.
And of course, you let these guys grow on the side so
Well, they're going to come out. We just haven't got to them yet.
Oh, I see.
We
I
just
thought
go
you
in
left them for the pests to feed on instead of...
The problem with dandelions is every dandelion makes a lot of seeds. So, but in the aisles, you see that's alfalfa there.
The big plant?
The big green plant, just in the aisles.
Yeah.
So that's alfalfa. It's just coming naturally.
And they, how tall do they grow?
They get tall. So then what'll happen is we can go in and we can chop that alfalfa down. Because it's in the alleyway, we can use it as mulch, and that'll help feed the soil.
And also in the composting, no?
If we wanted to, probably more in, we have a compost that's just garden waste over there, and we'd probably put it into there more than into our other. We may start, if we ever had enough, we may start incorporating it into that.
And the cattle love chewing on that.
Yeah, but we don't have animals here.
But generally cattle would love that as much as grass, right?
Yeah, they would, and they would love it if it was tall and turned into hay. They would love it in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Or incorporated into their food sources, or
Fantastic.
So the alfalfa it's actually used in so many places. If you think about honeybees, and you think about pollinating insects, and you think about...
Is that pollinated by insects?
Yes, if we were to let it grow and we want it and we had a field of it, it would...
It makes flowers that would attract a bee?
Little purple flowers.
With some honey in it, so that or some nectar in it, that
so the insects
would
come, and
that's how it is
where
pollinated.
and that's the challenge. If you have the genetically modified alfalfa growing,
bees don't know how to distinguish one from the other.
They don't know, and they don't know that there's a imaginary border on this man's property or this woman's property,
of course,
and that person on one side doesn't want the pollen from the other side. So they don't understand that. And,
they are not air
wind.
pollinated, is it?
Yeah, wind will do it too. Wind doesn't understand.
And the plant doesn't care whether it came from a bee or from the wind. As long as it came,
And it doesn't know that it was genetically modified or not.
Of course not.
So what they've found, they did some research in the States, and in 2005 they released genetically modified alfalfa into the environment in certain locations, specific in small regions. And we had a scientist come and talk to us last year at our sprout convention, and 5 years later she was doing research, and she was finding low levels of the DNA in roadside alfalfa plants far away from the location where that initial site was. And they only released it for 1 year, and then they stopped, and 5 years later they were still finding the DNA in roadside crops. So that's really concerning. That's because because it's perennial and because it travels fast, how do you ever, once it's released, how does that ever become undone?
Should we sit down somewhere?
Sure, go on. You've got chairs up here. I don't know the answers to these questions.
If you know how to walk backward, it would be better if you're there and walking backward, instead of shooting us from behind.
She's gonna walk backward. Just be careful you don't trip. I don't want you to fall over. It's an upward hill. So there's lots to be concerned about. But any plant, it doesn't take much for any plant to pollinate, and that's a big concern for any genetically modified crop. So if it's corn, one farmer can be growing genetically modified corn, and the other farmer can be growing organic corn, and then they cross-contaminate, and then the organic farmer has low-level transfer into their corn. So then, if you were to test that, you would get contamination, and then it's not organic anymore.
You lose your certification on one side, you get sued by the other side for growing their stuff.
Fairly much, even though you don't want it. Don't want it, but it's going to be there anyways. So this is one of our crazy experimental greenhouses where we're growing all sorts of funny things. This
Yeah?
is kale at the front. Kale is an amazing plant in this climate.
Why?
We eat it all winter long,
Uh-huh.
and it goes to seed, and those little seed heads taste like broccoli. And it will make as many seeds as you want it to, and it will resow itself, and then before you know it, your whole greenhouse is full of kale, and you can feed
But
1,000
you still
people.
need a greenhouse, otherwise it'll have a problem in the open.
That big plant in the middle there is a
Yeah.
kale plant.
And it seems to be doing okay.
Yeah, and we have kale plants down in the field. It's just a lot easier to harvest it when it's in a greenhouse in the wintertime. It's harder to get at.
Tell me something.
Outside.
You said people eat everything. What do? You cook as vegetable or what
You
do you?
can chop it into salad. You can, the tops you can steam like broccoli. If you steam the leaves with, however you would do the spinach, they're amazing.
And you don't have to replant it. The seeds just fall and grow on their
That's
own.
what we find.
Oh, I see.
You look in here, you'll see all the way. I sort of try and move it from one place to another so it can have, it's at this end right now, but by next winter it'll be in the middle area there. And by the following winter we'll have it moved down to the end, and we just kind of get nature to...
How do you move down? Do you just
We just
uproot
take,
them?
take the seeds and shake them, and we take the baby plants and move them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we can do all sorts of things.
And
So-
baby plants, you have to dig it out with the roots and everything and put them, huh?
Don't move it, no.
And they're not very deep rooted.
No, they once they get big they are, but when they're little, they're just
Ah.
little. Yeah. And
Fantastic.
the interesting thing about kale is that in the winter time, in the fall and winter, it's absolute, and spring it's delicious. And in
Yeah?
the winter it tastes awful. It tastes chalky and yucky. So in the summertime, when it tastes awful, and you've got all these other vegetables, so you don't really want to eat the kale. And then in the wintertime, in the fall and the spring, there's nothing else. So you really want to eat the kale, and it tastes so good. So it knows. It knows when it should make its flowers and babies, and it knows when it needs to be there for you to eat.
So it's ready to make the seeds?
Yeah, these are the seed heads. So if you take that, you can just eat that, just like that, if you want. Be brave.
It's delicious.
Do you want to try one?
It's very nice.
You've been eating it in Peggy's house.
Oh, yes.
The salad every day.
Yes, yes.
But apart from the big leaves, the tops are really nice.
Yeah, yeah. It's like broccoli.
I don't need to be a cow. I still like it.
Yeah, that's right. So, I don't know where you want to sit. We could sit just in the shade, or we can sit in the sunshine.
Shade is good.
Okay, shade is good. Let's sit. We've got the doors right up in the we might get to that. Interesting backdrop. Oh yes, that's all my baby plants. So we grow baby plants and then put them where we want them in the greenhouses. But we also do lots of things where we're direct seeding them. Oh, it's fun. This is what I love.
Yeah,
I love
if you love it. Many people say it's too much hard work and it's easier to sit behind a table and bang at a keyboard or to sit on the phone or something.
I do too much of that in my real job in there.
So you have a real job. Oh, you mean running
Running the
business?
sprouts, yeah. Running the business. We have 40 employees.
40 employees.
Yes. So there's 40 people that work with us here. Whoops. Oh dear. Yeah, I'm gonna move some of this.
You can, you can sit down yourself.
Yes, get you a chair. Actually, there's a clean one over there.
Which one?
There's one behind the table there.
Oh, yeah.
This is where Peggy and I had our picnic the other day. We sat
Thank
up
you.
here, we had tractors coming by. All sorts of things were happening. There, maybe a little nicer to look at.
Even if it looks natural, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're going to be famous.
Hey, just a minute, you told me don't. You didn't tell me that.
So,
Oh, dear.
Carmen, can you tell us your full name?
Yes, I am Carmen Wakeling, and I live in the Comox Valley in British Columbia, and I own a company called EatmoreSprouts and Greens.
EatmoreSprouts and Green.
Limited, but yeah. EatmoreSprouts and Greens, and my business partner is my husband, Glenn. So, and we have 2 kids, 18 and 20, and they've worked at the farm at different times, but yeah, right now my daughter's working in the garden, and my son is going to electronics school.
Wow.
So,
Electronic school.
yeah, he's taking his first year of electronics at North Island College.
Fantastic.
He wants to learn all about alternative energy sources and how to put them into action. So then hopefully he'll be able to come back and help us make this farm completely self-sufficient.
Wow. Maybe one day I have to interview him.
Yeah, maybe one day.
How long have you been at this farm, Carmen?
We have been at this location for 20 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
we moved to this location just when I found out I was pregnant with my son.
And you decided to live close away from the industrial environment.
Yeah, we had business partners that we actually only bought them out 3 years ago, or 3.5 years ago now, I guess. So our business partners, we were half owners. All of us were half owners in this company, and so it really didn't make sense for one of us to live here. And we had our business up in Oyster River initially before we moved it here, and it was 2 feet away from my front door, and I had about 4 employees then, and I had 2 babies, and it was too much. So I decided that I didn't really want to live on the same place that our business was, because when you have your own business, you're already very, very, very committed to it. But if it's too close, it's
You don't
easier.
have a private life anymore.
Yeah, you never have any time to yourself. So this way I can go home and have a separate place, and I can come back to work and be refreshed and bring my energy with me.
And you have always been organic?
Yeah, since they started having organic rules. So we were certified organic in 1994. I think that probably there'd been a movement towards developing standards and things like that just a bit before we got involved.
1994 is roughly when GMO was coming across the horizon to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Before that there was no need. Everything was organic, right?
Yeah. Well, it was, except people were using a lot of sprays.
Lots of chemicals.
A lot of chemicals. So that was at that time, because we didn't realize that GMOs were even going to be an issue. The reason we wanted to do it was because we wanted our consumers to know that we weren't using sprays and that we were making principles of organics or building better soil.
If you can come up a little
Come
bit.
closer. Come closer. Cuddle. Building better soil and leaving the land better than you find it, and that's a bit different than conventional agriculture tends towards. They tend towards more chemical use, and it's shorter term thinking. Whereas organics, the intent behind organics has always been long term, leaving the planet healthier. A friend of mine said, and I think this is amazing, she said, organic principles are just tools. And they're just tools to make our planet better in the long run. Because we can't know that an airplane's not going to fly over us if we contaminate our farm. We can't know that our next door neighbors aren't using lots of chemicals. But what we can do is what we can do.
Right.
So they're tools to make it one little part of a big environment a little bit better.
Absolutely. Now in 20 years you have grown your business.
Yeah. And we started with my husband and I both working off the farm, and we had 4 part-time employees who came and did our packing for us. And so, is that too noisy?
No, that's okay.
And then we would pass each other in the door at midnight, because I would be coming in from doing something in the sprout facility, and he'd be coming back from driving somewhere. And then we ended up with a baby. So things had to change a little bit. So we went into partnership with our business partner and moved to this land. And good idea. And when we a lot of things fell into place. The reason we made the choice to move to this land was because we had lots of interest in what we were doing, and people really wanted our products. And our company grew exponentially in about a 4-year period of time. We went from a little bit of distribution down to Nanaimo and a little bit of local stuff. I actually worked for the company before we bought it. And when I was 17, I started driving. So I would drive up to Campbell River and deliver sprouts up there, and I would drive around Courtney and deliver sprouts. And so it was small, but it was really interesting. That there was so much that you could do with it. And then the people that I was working for had a marriage separation, and they just decided they didn't want to do anything more that's how we ended up with it in our backyard in this river. And our business partner was out in Dove Creek, and we just decided it made sense. With all these interest in our company and people wanting our products, we realized it was a good idea to come together in one place. So we found this place, and we made it. We just jumped. We made an offer, and we made a low offer because we didn't know what we were doing, and they accepted it. So we ended up moving both of our production facilities here, and we built one part of the facility, and we thought, there's so much room, we're going to be able to do this forever. And 2 years later, we were so overgrown, we couldn't fit anybody else in there, and we couldn't, and so we had to keep on adding. So we kept adding on to the business and adding on little rooms, and it's kind of funny because now Glenn and I are having to kind of rethink the whole thing, and, get rid of some of those little rooms and make better environment. Always ongoing growth.
Are you thinking of acquiring more land?
We're in the process of working on a lease with our next door neighbors, so we'll have an extra 7.5 acres.
Oh, wow.
My husband's been over there subsoiling it, and we're going to transition that into organic.
And you have to pay rent to that?
Yeah, but it's worth it for us because they were putting animal manure over there, and with the sensitive nature of our sprout products, we didn't want the animal manure next door to us. So, and we also really believe that this permaculture idea that we're kind of just starting to flow with is going to be something that people will want to see, and maybe it'll be a solution to a lot of our troubles. And so, as food producers everywhere, so we want to kind of be experimental. We feel like we have a bit of a benefit or a luxury because we have this sprout facility that goes year round, and so we can keep on producing income all year. And then the farm,
you can experiment somewhere else.
Yeah, the farm just needs to be able to break even in the short term, and with the goal being in the long term.
This has broken even already?
Last year we did quite well, like pretty close to breaking even as far as labor in and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, the thing was, we didn't start till a lot later than this year, and we were also we had re-breaking the fields. We hadn't really grown anything, so we were having to get the fields started up again, and we'd been in construction, so we had to do all this development and shaping our beds and all these things.
The farm still has a lot of loan to pay back? Or no?
Not the farm. We have, no, not really. We have to, we bought our business partner out, so that's what we're dealing with. So it's not that bad.
Very good.
Yeah.
So now this changing scene with alfalfa, for instance.
Yeah.
What do you have with regard to this GM alfalfa coming in and your business and our end?
Well, the GMO or GE, we get confused by those words, and they're really the same thing. And it's really important for people to understand that, because a lot of times that language is what people try and keep confusion around. So,
but the most common term now for alfalfa is GM alfalfa, right?
GM alfalfa or GM alfalfa.
They are not calling it GE alfalfa all that much.
No, but it is confusing because we just passed a GE resolution to make Vancouver Island
GE free.
GE free.
Right.
But so that's why it's important that language is identified clearly. So as I said earlier, we don't grow our alfalfa seed in the Comox Valley. We buy it from Saskatchewan, where it's generally grown in the prairies. And the farmers that are growing the alfalfa are very concerned. And as we spoke about, because of cross-pollination potentials and the fact that we won't be able to find streams of alfalfa that don't have low-level contamination of some sort. And it doesn't sound like such a big deal, except that seed ownership issues are a big challenge with genetically modified foods, because the seed companies have that technology, and then if the DNA is transferred into our crops or into my farmer's crops who I buy seed from, then suddenly they could be in trouble. And it also means that we will never, ever, ever, well, I shouldn't say never, ever, but that be very, very challenging to undo it. So that's one part of it. The other part I feel is that it doesn't seem to me, and I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem to me that there's enough information about the health benefits or the health impacts to humans or to any species at this point in regard to what genetically modified organisms are doing to our bodies. And so I don't think that it's very prudent to pursue something if you don't understand what it's doing to your body. So until that scientific research is done by a third party completely removed from any of those companies, it's really important for us to be aware that we may be introducing something that in the long term hurts us. And we don't know that. We don't know that, but we've learned.
Test it long enough.
Yeah, we've learned with all different chemicals,
Usually they
thalidomide.
turn out to be bad.
There's so many examples of situations where, this is the new thing, and then we discovered 20 years later that we just did something awful to our kids, and we don't, I'm not a fear monger.
No, also the GM crops, including alfalfa that is found in the market up to now, the best I understand it has something to do with poison also.
Yeah.
Either it's poison tolerant, so you can put more pesticide on it, or it creates poison itself, one way or another, and not really about something that has more vitamin and there's nothing you know. That's not what you do, isn't it?
That's right. A friend of mine says there's nothing sexy about GMOs.
So tell me something, how big is the local market for alfalfa sprouts?
We distribute through Western Canada, and we grow in the range of 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of alfalfa sprouts a week.
A week?
A week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then our total production of different varieties of sprouts is about 8,000 pounds a week approximately.
Oh, so the alfalfa is a very big component of your business.
It's substantial because it's a base for our deli sprouts and it's the base for our garlic sprouts. So it will really impact us.
And it is sold mostly as human food.
We sell all our alfalfa sprouts as human food.
And it's all only Western Canada or also exported?
No, we don't export. It's a very sensitive product. So temperatures, all those sorts of things. It just doesn't have. It has a shelf life of about 14 days, so you can only get it as far as you can get it in 6 days, and then people have to eat it. So we want to get it to our consumers as fast as possible. So we really don't want. It's not about expanding our markets internationally or anything like that, but people really appreciate the nutritional component of what we do, of the food we make, and we do it with care. As I was saying earlier, we test everything. We're very conscientious about our food safety practices. So we feel that we're producing a product that can really benefit people. And at one point in my life, I was going to be a nurse, and I had to give a patient 16 medications, and I decided that I didn't want to do that, and that this was a way that I could help people be healthy through consuming healthy food.
Do you think that Western Canada might be exporting alfalfa? I'm asking this question because I spoke with CBAN, Lucy Sharrett, and also I spoke with Canadian organic growers both in Ottawa, and trying to understand a little bit more about alfalfa. And what they told me is that the issue right now with GM alfalfa was for introduction in Eastern Canada and not Western Canada. And I asked why not? Why not Western Canada? Is because Western Canada has already rejected it. And I said, why did they reject it? And they said that because they have an export market on alfalfa and the importers abroad do not want GMO, so they stand to lose a very big market. But in Eastern Canada, they don't export anything. It's all for local consumption, so it's not quite, they want to sneak it into the East and open. So that's why I was asking, that means somebody else in the mainland area is exporting maybe?
They're not exporting alfalfa sprouts necessarily. But what they'll be doing is exporting seed or alfalfa products, alfalfa honey.
Oh,
So
there's
alfalfa
such a
honey.
thing as alfalfa honey.
Yeah, and a lot of the honey has alfalfa in it.
Oh.
A lot. I mean, that's because there's so many flowers at a certain time of year. So alfalfa honey, and then we're feeding it to our animals. So if we're feeding it to our animals, to our organic cows, for example, we can't export
Oh,
organic
so all that market
meat.
might get lost if GM
Yeah.
alfalfa comes.
because it's
Oh,
such
I
a
see.
big part of our of food of it, basically
food
it's
web.
the building blocks of food to some extent, of the food that we are eating to some extent, right?
So the Western Canadians were already conscious enough to reject it, according to these
Well,
two sources.
yeah, and I think it's the farmers in Western Canada must, she has the information. I'm involved in CBAN, but I can't speak. She has a lot more information than I do in that regard. And so if she says that that's what she's found out, then that makes sense. So,
That's what you say, that they didn't want that to lose the market,
Yeah.
but since the East doesn't export much, it would be the Monsanto and they thought that it would be easier to sneak it in there, and once you're in, then you try to expand. So for you, the concern in that case, if it's not the export market, what exactly would be your concern? People will stop taking your sprouts because it is contaminated?
yeah, number one, we're certified organic, so we're not allowed to use genetically modified organisms.
Yes.
Number two, we don't really want to eat them ourselves, so we don't really want to feed them to other people. And if only we can access genetically modified seed, then we're going to have to make some big choices.
Oh, so let me get it right. You are getting your seeds from other suppliers, and if they cannot supply certified organic alfalfa seeds, that means you essentially can't do it.
Well, yeah, we'll have to look further and further. We'll probably end up having to import it from Europe or something, which would it gets pretty
course,
exorbitant.
of course,
You know,
it
from
becomes-
it gets
It becomes crazy.
yeah, and
And
we are a big producer of alfalfa seeds. So
tell me another thing. Just like you get your compost tested, that it doesn't carry E. coli or something, do they also have to genetically analyze your alfalfa? How does it work now?
at this point, it hasn't. I know
Come to
the company that I work with has done a couple of tests because they were concerned about a couple of different lots that they were getting from certain places.
Of alfalfa or something else?
Yeah, of alfalfa. So I think that they might have been getting. I don't know. I just know that they've done a couple of tests at different times in the last few years, just to make sure
Of your products?
of alfalfa seed that they have. Yeah. So,
From you?
No.
Oh no,
seed
from
that-
where you're buying?
From yeah. So the company we work with buys from other farmers in Saskatchewan and throughout Canada. So they grow a lot of the seed themselves, but they also buy. So they're supporting farmers in that region. So
And you are buying from them?
yeah, we're buying
And
from.
they got theirs tested just to be sure?
They just wanted to make sure. They are certified organic, but I know that when that release happened in the States in 2005, they were a little bit concerned that they might have some ripple effect. So I know that they did do some testing at that point. But it will have to become standard practice to test every single time if we, pretty soon I would say, if the American alfalfa continues to be in the marketplace and we're if any of the production is happening close to the borders, then it becomes an issue. So, yeah.
Are you involved in some sort of activism or some sort of effort outside your farm to raise awareness or to resist incursion of GMO or anything like that?
I'm pretty involved in lots of aspects.
Yeah?
Yeah. But one of the things that I think is really important, and I talked to you about this earlier, especially when we're talking farmer to farmer, is not to point fingers and to say, oh, you're bad because you're growing it.
Right, of course.
And why are you growing it? Because, but it's to say, this is going to impact my business and my consumers. And I wouldn't want to do that to you. How can we work together to find solutions? And if there aren't any solutions, well then yes, I'm going to say, please don't grow this. But
The people who are growing GM products here in this island are mostly corn or
it's
something
on
else?
the island right now, it is all corn. There's nothing else that I know of that's genetically modified being grown. And so this resolution's been quite interesting because our farmers,
Which resolution?
the genetically, the
This
resolution
island
for
is-
Vancouver Island to be GE free, and it only just passed 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago now,
yes.
and so we're all still in a bit of shock and awe because
Yeah.
there were a number of us that were involved in educating people about what it meant and about what the impact might be, and trying to and supporting it from a farmer point of view, and I was one of those people. And
So you had to go and educate the people who actually vote for the
Yeah.
motion or against the motion.
a friend of mine and I went to the councillors meeting and had sat down and gave them basically a 101 on what genetically modified organisms and GE crops were, and just helped them understand what the resolution meant and how it might impact the community. So that was quite interesting because it was a situation that was a bit uncomfortable because there were people that were quite opposed to having that
They were hostile to your views.
they're just scared. They just don't know what it means.
They were scared, but
They're fearful, and fear turns into anger sometimes, so they were upset. Yeah.
that you are going to take away their livelihood.
That the possibility that they might not be able to use genetically modified corn on the island would come up.